As we all know, the Chargers don't have a whole lot of cap space entering free agency, and there's so... No, that's not good. As we all know, the Chargers don't really have a whole lot of cap space to work with this offseason, and although you're stuck in a tough spot, you're not going to be able to bring in any big names in free agency, I still think there are some pretty decent options that the Chargers could target in free agency this year. So I want to cover that. And there are a lot of options internally, of course. Drue Tranquill, Trey Pipkins, Morgan Fox, all these guys. But I already made a separate video covering, who I think they should keep, who they will be able to keep, and stuff like that. So if you want to check out internal free agents for the Chargers, feel free to go check out that video. But we're going to be covering the external free agents from other teams, and talking about some guys that, one, could be upgrades for this team, but also won't break the bank. As we know, the Chargers currently sit $20 million over the cap, and they will have to figure out how to manage that, whether that's moving money around on current players on the team, cutting players, or however else you might manage that. They will have to find a way to make space while re-signing some of their internal free agents and still having space for the rookies that they're going to be drafting. But there are still some other options. So let's go ahead and focus on some external free agents for the Chargers that will be upgrades but won't break the bank for the Bolts. So I have, I think, 5 guys right here covering different positions that could be good options for the Bolts. Now, the first guy I want to cover here is going to be if the Chargers can't bring back one of their top options. Actually, most of these are going to be in retention for if you can't keep a guy like Drue Tranquill, bring this guy in or such. So this position is going to be Jawaan Taylor. He's the right tackle from the Jaguars, and this will be in case Trey Pipkins is not able to stay on this team for contract reasons. A lot of people are starting to think that he's going to be asking a good amount of money, somewhere in the realm of like 8 to 10 million, which is definitely up there high. That might be out of the range of the Chargers, but I think Jawaan Taylor could be a really good option, and there are reports that he would be in a lower tier of contract-wise, even though he's pretty close to the level of play that Trey Pipkins is. So most of these contracts, of course, I will be talking from Spot Track, and I'll mention how much I think they'll cost at the end. But Jawaan Taylor could be a very good fit for this Chargers team if they are not able to keep Trey Pipkins. He did a great job for the Jaguars. Now, we saw Trey Pipkins kind of go in and out of the rotation due to some injuries last year with his leg. And with Jawaan Taylor, it would bring, a solid guy that will stay in there. He's been 4 years straight with 1,000 snaps through each one of those years. So he's going to be able to stay on the field. And that's a big factor, trying to keep guys like Storm Norton off the field, because they really show that when they're on the field, it's going to cause a lot of issues for Justin Herbert. But not only that, Taylor was a great right tackle last year. He allowed only 2.5% pressure rate, which put him at the 3rd lowest among the right tackle position. So he is one of the best in the entire league at his position for limiting pressure against the quarterback, which is exactly what we need. We need to allow Herbert time to get that ball down the field. Just allow him time to analyze the field and not be in a rush to throw balls in a position that either won't lead to a big enough gain or could lead to some turnovers. So that would be a huge step up to bring in a guy like Jawaan Taylor, at least in pressure sense, that is. And he is only 25 years old. He could be a guy that you bring to this team that could be a long-term option for you. He could be, someone that you bring in now for contract, either 1-year contract because you're dealing with money issues and maybe the cap moves up enough that you can give him a long-term contract next year, or you could sign him to a longer-term contract this coming year. Now, Spot Track predicts that his contract will probably be about 3 years, about $6 million. So that's a pretty good number right there. A little bit lower than what Trey Pipkins is going to be expecting, and could be a really good option to fill in for Trey Pipkins. And I think pretty close to the level of what we saw from Pipkins. I think, Jawaan Taylor could be a really good pickup, and I think should be the number 1 target if the Chargers are unable to maintain Trey Pipkins on this line, on the right tackle position. Next guy here, once again, is going to be a filler for if the Chargers, in this case, are unable to keep Drue Tranquill, and that's going to be David Long Jr. Now, he is coming from the Titans. Maybe not the best defense in the entire league, but they had a pretty good year. Long could be a great player, and I think the biggest thing would be to help fix your run defense. He was great in the run defense, especially for his position, doing a great job. And if a guy like Kyle Van Noy or Drew Tranquill are not on the team next year, you could bring him in for a really good fill to upgrade the position, not only overall, but also in the run game. He is ranked 4th among his position via PFF for run defensive, just grade, overall grade. He's 4th from PFF, and he also would be coming from a 3-4 base defense, which the Chargers run, which means you're not going to have a whole lot of scheme-related issues. Is now you got to transition him into the scheme, and things might not work. It's going to click right away, and that's a big factor in this. And he could fix the run defense, and he could bring you some decent pass rushes. I think David Long Jr. could be a very good option. I'm not 100% sure if he's the best option for the position, but I think he could bring enough, and especially that run defense, it's a big factor. I think if you're not going to keep a guy like Kyle Van Noy, if you're not going to keep a guy like Drew Tranquill, you got to bring someone in that's going to upgrade your run defense, and David Long Jr. does exactly that. Now, the next guy here is going to be a wide receiver, and maybe not a wide receiver that a lot of people would hope for, and that's going to be Jarvis Landry. And I know a lot of people are going to be coming at me, why do we need Jarvis Landry? We need a speed guy, but I think he could be a really good fit for this roster. Jarvis Landry is probably a little bit closer to Keenan Allen-wise than other, Mike Williams or wide receivers like that. He could really do a good thing for Herbert, though. We saw a lot of injury issues last year in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. If you could have a guy like Jarvis Landry who can step in right away, it could be a great spot. Last year in week 1, he put up like 112 yards or something like that, which is a really good number. If you're losing Keenan Allen, you're losing Mike Williams for injury for any length of time, if you can have someone step in and put up production like that, that's really, really good. But he could also be a great wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 that you can rotate in when people are tired, or you want a different set, you want to space out, empty pocket, triples over here. There's a lot of stuff that Jarvis Landry can bring to your team. And although he's not the level that he used to be when he was with the, I think, Dolphins and with the Browns, he's not that level anymore. He can still be a really, really good guy for you and bring a good amount to this team. Last year, he signed a vet minimum with the Saints, as you see right here. I expect he'll probably take somewhere around that realm once again. And the Chargers bringing a guy on a vet minimum that has the ability to play the way that Jarvis Landry did last year and did previously with upgrade quarterback Justin Herbert. The Saints were dealing with so many quarterback injuries and issues. Bring Jarvis Landry to Herbert. I think you're going to see his numbers go back up. Maybe not to the level they were a few years back, but definitely go back up. Jarvis Landry would be, honestly, a really good pickup, although maybe not the flashiest option if we're looking for speed. But I think the draft could be a way to go target that. Now, Robert Tonyan Jr. is an option, personally, I really like it. I haven't seen him linked to the Chargers a whole bunch, but I think he could bring something to this team. Now, this could be dependent on if you're able to work the cap around and keep Gerald Everett, because there are some reports that Gerald Everett might be released from the team. I think Tonyan could be your tight end 1. I could also see that he could be your tight end 2. He was, of course, tight end 1 with the Packers and had some decent years. Last year, 53 receptions, 470 yards, and 2 touchdowns, a little bit less than Everett. Not elite levels, but could be a solid guy to be your tight end 1. But my biggest thing would be tight end 2. If you can bring in a guy like Tonyan and put him at tight end 2, I think it'd be a really, really good option. And Herbert to Rodgers, there's not a huge drop-off, so I think his numbers could stay around the same. You get another great, solid tight end alongside Everett. He could bring a lot to you and get another guy that Herbert can rely on in really tough situations. And he's not super expensive. I think Everett's on about $8 million for this coming year. He only has 1 more year left. Tonyan would probably be in the realm of about like 4, 5, maybe 6 million. And I think that's, still decently high. Maybe you'd rather get a guy in the draft. But the biggest thing for me right here in looking at Tonyan, one, he can bring a lot to your team. He can break it over the top. We saw some big plays for the Packers on big-time over-the-top plays. But bringing a guy like Tonyan solidifies your tight end 2 spot and makes it so you're not forced to pick up a tight end in the draft. That's kind of my biggest worry, is being like kind of forced into taking a guy in the draft. I'd like to fill these spots and then use the draft to, get best player available at positions of need at the same time. So you have like four or five positions of need. Okay, this is the best available for one of these positions of need. Tonyan could do a great job at allowing you a little bit more leeway when the draft comes. Now, the last guy I think is a name that maybe Chargers fans won't be a big fan of, but brings a good amount to this team, and that's going to be Nelson Agholor. Now, the big thing here, Agholor is a little bit of a weird option, but he is a speed guy. And once again, like I said with Tonyan, bringing in a guy like Nelson Agholor could be a good choice because it doesn't force you to make a pick in the draft. That's really, really important for me, making it so that you don't feel like you have to reach for a guy because he might be gone by the time your next pick comes around. And Agholor can do just that. He's currently the 10th fastest wide receiver in the NFL. That's a really, really good number. He runs, a sub 4.4, which is exactly what everyone's always looking for in wide receivers. And he's shown that he can be a really, really good wide receiver. With the Raiders, he was with the Raiders for 1 year. He had 48 receptions and 898 yards. Those are some really, really good numbers with a guy like Derek Carr, who definitely isn't at Justin Herbert level. Now, I do believe that Agholor was wide receiver 1 in that instance. He definitely wouldn't be for the Chargers. He went to the Patriots last year. We saw a huge drop-off in production. The past 2 years, actually, he's been with the Patriots. Seeing, over those 2 years, 68 receptions, 835 yards. So, more receptions, but less yards over 2 years compared to 1 year with the Raiders. So, a big drop-off. The way I'm kind of looking at this, one, you get the speed. One, he's shown he can be good. Now, he doesn't have the best hands. We saw a lot of that with the Eagles. Eagles fans were always talking about he was dropping every single ball thrown his way, and that's tough. He signed a 2-year, $22 million contract with the Patriots. And the Chargers certainly don't have money like that to pay $11 million for a wide receiver. And certainly not a guy like Nelson Agholor. But the fact is, he was putting up numbers similar to what he put up with the Patriots with the Eagles. Last year, he put up about 400 yards and a decent amount of receptions. And he signed with the Raiders for $1 million. After a poor year with the Eagles. After only one poor year with the Eagles, he had like 700 before that. And he signs for $1 mil. 1 year, $1 mil. Kind of a prove a deal. He goes to the Patriots. He gets paid big time money. But he has 2 bad years again. I think that's going to bring his market value again. Maybe not to the value of $1 million once again like the Raiders, because he's shown what he can be capable of. That's enough for people to maybe be able to be willing to pay him a little bit more. But because he had numbers similar to when he got paid short, I think his number's going to come down. As long as he realizes that, his number's going to come down. And I could see him in the realm of $2-3 million. And he could be a really good pickup. I think you bring him in on like a short-term deal, 1-year deal, something like that. Draft a guy that has speed. You're not forced to do it in the first round. Now, if you do, you can still use Agholor and him together. That would work really, really well. I mean, look at how Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton worked for Herbert in his first year. They worked really, really well. If you can get 2 speed guys, great. But then you're not forced to look for a speed guy in the first round. Maybe you see a better option in the first round. Maybe you see a better option in the second round. So you go 3rd, 4th, 5th round, you go get a speed wide receiver. But you already have Agholor, so it's not a huge need. You let the draft person progress underneath Agholor for a year or 2, and then now you still have a speed guy. You got to get the guy that fills the need right now. You get him on a cheap deal if he realizes that his market value's come down. I think Agholor could be a really good option for the Chargers. Those are my 5 picks for, decent sleeper free agency picks for the Chargers. And there's plenty of other options that you could look at. But the Chargers don't have a lot of cap space, and they're likely going to be able to pick up maybe 1 or 2 guys off this list if they were to choose from this list specifically. Probably won't be able to bring in a whole lot of people from free agency, but what do you guys think? Who would you like to see the Chargers bring in free agency? And is there anyone on the list that you think might be intriguing for the Chargers. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope it taught something today. Hope it made you smile, hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects most day in a great way. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.